to, as well as me just talking to you, we'll also be able to chat later, and you can ask me some questions, and we can go through different topics. It's also a real treat for me to come to Seville. How many people are actually from Seville who are here? Okay, quite a big crowd. Okay, but yeah, for me, it's you're obviously used to this weather, but for me, coming from London, this is just fantastic. So thank you very much again for the invitation. So in terms of what I wanted to cover today, the first kind of main topic was around talking about a data-driven world. So this is something that obviously Google concerns itself with a lot, is trying to gather the world's data together. And there's a huge amount of data out there, and Google Analytics really fits into that in terms of trying to gather that data together and give it to you in an actionable way. Then looking at, that can obviously be a bit overwhelming, and where do you start with all this data? What's the kind of starting point, and how can you approach it? Next, who can help you? So I think we've got some Google Analytics certified partners. Have we got any hands up for certified partners in the audience today? Hiding, okay, hiding behind the scenes. Yeah, talking a little bit about certified partners and what to look out for in terms of people that can help you with Google Analytics. I then want to talk about something called the optimization framework. This is an idea that's extremely popular within Google and elsewhere, and we'll give you some ideas around, first of all, what a certified partner might run through with your site, but also some of the things you could look at yourself. And then we'll go through just a summary of what we've covered there. We're going to include a live demo in that, so that's an opportunity for everything to be either very exciting or to go completely wrong. Either way, it's hopefully going to be entertaining. And then an overview of Google Analytics Premium. So some of you may have heard of Google Analytics Premium and be interested about the differences between that and the standard Google Analytics product. And that's what I'm aiming to deal with at that stage. So I realised that this is one of the presentations that's in English, and English is probably not everyone's first language. So if I am talking too fast, do raise your hand. I tend to start off a little bit fast and then hopefully I'll slow down. But yeah, do let me know if I'm talking too fast during the presentation, and I'll try and tailor it to everyone's needs. So first of all, I wanted to talk about the data-driven world in which we live. So there's a huge amount of data out there, and it's growing the whole time. So just to give you an idea, in terms of looking at 2010, Google did a kind of a rough analysis of some of the data that was out there. So in terms of internet users, we estimated there's 1.9 billion internet users worldwide in 2010. In terms of mobile subscribers, 5 billion. And that's interesting. There's more mobile subscribers than there are internet users. So that's partly because
So we want it to be relevant, and we want it to be actionable. So in other words, and this is your website, and there's something you can do about it. So I'm quite keen on astronomy, and I'm no expert there, but it's interesting when you look out there, and when I was looking at information about the radio traffic, when you look at these things like the overall picture of where it's happening in the universe, you've got like billions of galaxies in this universe. Think like cover of space, like hundreds, like 10,000 galaxies there is potentially the size of the moon. And if you try and think about those civilizations out there at the moment, then you've got the Milky Way galaxy, which is one of those millions of galaxies. And within that, there's 200 million stars. And again, you might just think that all the data is the same thing as the website.
So again, it's quite a small portion, but it's still an
Then we've got our solar system, which is just within one star alarm of the Milky Way. If you think of that as maybe just you and your competitors, it could be that your website has not just competitors, but maybe more planets to go in. Your local area is also being somewhere else. And then of course there's your website, which you have lots of control over, because we operate from that unique space from fingertips and unique system of where else around you. So all of this could be a little overwhelming for you, and you may want to think around, where do I actually start, where do I start with all this? So I want to take that to 2008, and maybe something that you've seen information about before, but may maybe didn't know it, and probably now looking a little bit older, a little bit
in office. But he was one of the first people to really understand how digital strategy was important to his campaign. And he actually did a lot of work with digital analysis of his website. And one of the particular items I want to focus on is the homepage for the site. So this was one of the kind of mock-ups for the homepage. He did something called A/B testing with the homepage. So he looked into different variations of the homepage, of the main landing page, to look at how that affected people joining up and donating. And they looked at various variations. So they had different pictures here. They actually had videos here at one stage. They tried different text for the button down here. So just really these two key elements. And you might think it didn't make a huge amount of difference. But actually, they went through multiple combinations. They ended up with this one. And they found out that as they were running the trials of the different versions, that this was a clear winner. This was leading to far more donations overall. And it's absolutely staggering the amount that was raised online. So it's $500 million was raised online by that campaign. Now it could be that they would have raised a large amount online already, but we know through the testing, through the scientific experimental testing on that site, that this led to a lot more donations just by looking at those elements. So again, it can be overwhelming, all the data that's out there and all the things that are going on, but you can make some tiny changes to a site and make a huge difference to the amount of potential that that site has. And not surprisingly, 2012, Obama is now recruiting again for data analysts. So he completely understands the value that this added to the whole campaign, so not just the website, but the entire campaign. And he's now recruiting for analysts for a 2012 campaign. And yeah, if you do want to apply, that's the link. So we're not all President Obama, obviously, but who can we get to help us out with our digital campaign? So who can we get to help us out with these kind of elements? Google has a program that's dedicated to finding the best people to help you out with Google Analytics. It's been running for a long time, and it's called the Google Analytics Certified Partner Program. I am lucky enough to deal with certified partners throughout Europe on a regular basis, and they're incredibly talented people. A lot of them know huge amounts about Google Analytics. Many of them have been involved with Google Analytics for many, many years, for longer than I have, and know, oops. There we go, stage is collapsing. Yeah, so they're definitely the people to contact. And you can go onto the Google website. If you go to google.com/analytics and then /partners, there'll be a list of Google Analytics certified partners in your area. And obviously, we've got lucky enough to have some fantastic certified partners here as well today. So, if I get a Google Analytics certified partner involved, or if I want to look at my website, I want to have an approach, a kind of strategic approach to how I deal with not just the website, but the data that it's producing. And this is one of the things that, again, a certified partner would help you with. But I just wanted to talk you through the kind of structure, the way we tend to approach this process. So we talk about something called the optimization framework. And from a high level, it's very simple. What you do is you identify things that you think might be problems on the website. So this tends to be a stage where you're hypothesizing. So you're testing out a theory. You want to, you have an idea that something might be a problem or might be working well, and you want to test that out. Then there's the diagnosis stage, and that is where you use data. You get people in to look at your site, to run through processes on your site. You analyze that, you look at click data and all those sorts of things. Then you test. So this is where it comes into, similar to with the Obama campaign, testing different variations, making changes on your site and seeing if those have a positive outcome. Then you implement those changes and hopefully reap the rewards. And then you start all over again. So this really sometimes is drawn as a circle because it's an ongoing process. It's not something where you get to the end and that's it, sadly. So this is something you could continue and continue improving your site. So here's a little more detail on each of those steps. So I realise the text is very small, but the key thing to understand is that first you're identifying. So you're using maybe Google Analytics or other data that you have to try and identify some elements on the site that are not performing. And we'll go through what the kind of key ones of those are, so you can look at where the key culprits tend to be. Then you diagnose, so you look at more of the data. You do things like get usability experts involved. You bring users in and get them to run through your site and see what they are having trouble with. Then you test, so you build maybe different variations of your site. You do some A/B testing, which is something I will be covering in a bit more detail later on. Then you implement, and that allows you to test over a longer period. Hopefully you will then see the benefits of what you've discovered. So let's start with the first item, so identify. What can you do to identify any performance issues with your site? So maybe items on your site that are underperforming. Before you do that, what I'd recommend is you decide how to measure performance. This is something that is often overlooked. So people often just think, well, if I reduce the bounce rate on my site, or if I get more visitors on my site, then maybe that's a sign of success. Maybe more page views on the homepage, does that mean it's successful? So I wanted to give an example of this hotel, so the Abba Triana Hotel. What might be something that they could use to measure their performance? So there might be some obvious things like revenue. So if I sell lots of rooms, I book the whole hotel out, then obviously that's a good thing, so that might be one of the things that they would look at. However, there might be other things that are important to them. So it could be to do with the number of bookings in the future, so making sure they continue to fill the rooms. It could be that they want people to engage with the hotel, so it could be somebody following this hotel on Twitter, or following the group of hotels on Twitter or on Facebook, liking the hotel page. It could also be things like downloading PDF files. So it could be that somebody is looking having a wedding party and they want to book some rooms for that, there could be some information on the site about that. If somebody downloads that, then that's a strong indicator that they are interested in booking and they're engaged with the site. So there's all these different things that you could use to measure performance aside from just revenue, so just from pure money. So an example of that is with a blog site. If you have a blog site, what might be important to you is that people are engaging with your content. It also might be that you want them to click on, AdSense ads or other display ads, because that's bringing you some revenue. But one of the important things might be people returning to your site, so that might be a sign of performance success. And it also might be that you want people to leave your site and that you want them to click through on articles you recommend and go off the site. So it's important to start by thinking about how you measure performance. So what then, those are the business objectives. What are the website actions that indicate success? So then you can think of it on a website level. E-commerce transactions are maybe a more obvious one, but it could be things like clicking on a link to download a PDF. That could be an action that you want people to do. And then you want to think about what within the website are people doing that leads to those actions. And what are the things that are putting people off? What are the blockages to those actions? So once you've decided how you measure performance, so what is performance for you, you can then try to identify some of the pages that are key to performance. And this chart shows, this side we have traffic, so not very many people will probably visit terms of use here, but many people will visit the home page. And likewise, in terms of importance for performance, if somebody goes to the contact details page, that's interesting, but they're more likely to be showing that they're going to purchase something if they go to a landing page, so if they've clicked on an ad and ended up on a landing page, or they've gone through the checkout process. That's obviously a very high indication. So going back to the hotel example, at this stage I want to identify, so I want to come up with a theory, I want to come up with a hypothesis about something with the hotel that I could improve upon. So one of the classic items that people look at now is mobile sites. And there's a large percentage of advertisers who still don't have a mobile site. I think it's still something like 70% of large advertisers don't have mobile dedicated sites that can be viewable on most smartphones. So if we look at, for example, the hotel that we're staying at the moment, you can see that this is what the home page looks like on an iPhone, and there's, if you're interested, there's a little app called Mobilizer that will allow you to do this very easily. You can just download it and then type in a website. There's other tools to do that as well, but this is quite a nice one. So looking at that, I could see that a lot of the detail of the page is missing. So this might be a good hypothesis that we want to focus on the home page and we want to think about mobile. So first of all, you could compare to competitors. It's not a very good comparison with competitors because there we go. That's a better comparison with competitors. Shouldn't have left those animations in there. If we look across here, these are actually in Barcelona, so I'm cheating a little bit. But you can see there which one is kind of easier and more welcoming in order to book. So yes, you have got the book online page on this site on the left, but on the right here you can see it's a mobile design page. It's very clear what you need to do, and you get a feeling that at each stage it's been designed for mobile. It's going to be easy to click through and to get to the final stages. So let's look at the animations for a moment. Oops. So the next question is, should I care about mobile? So yes, it doesn't look great on a mobile device. Yes, it looks like my competitors have spent some time creating a mobile site, but is mobile actually something that I should invest time in? Is this something where I should be concentrating and spending money on? So I guess many of you have probably seen this before, but just in terms of, this is mobile queries, so this is people going into Google or Bing or Yahoo and on their mobile devices and doing search queries. And just within the year up to 2011, we saw 4 times growth, so 4 times as many mobile queries. Then if we look at a little bit more local, so look at the local market, we can see that Spain is also one of those countries where there's a large amount of smartphone usage. So this indicates people are likely to come onto the site and actually do things like book a room, purchase something, maybe even download a PDF. And again, I think this data is from last year, but in terms of the growth in the Spanish market for smartphones, we're also seeing a large growth there. So this is something that, that you would want to focus on. It does seem that there is a growing use for smartphones, and it might be worth looking into focusing on that for your site. And a lot of this data can be obtained from a site called thinkinsights.com. So I'll send around the links afterwards, but that's something that's worth visiting just to look at the wider picture. Then, using Google Analytics, you can actually look at your own data. So you can look at how many people on mobile devices are already visiting your site. So this gives you an idea of the kind of untapped potential on your own site. So not just the wider picture. Yes, we know there's loads of smartphones out there, but you can actually see, well, people are actually trying to do things on my site. So if we have a look here, this is just looking at first at visits. So this is visits at the top there. And see if you can see the difference in terms of here, if we look at actual transactions. So it's kind of like Pac-Man, which is quite fun. But yeah, so you can see overall there's a large amount of visits from mobile, but when we look at transactions, there's very few. So that suggests that we could be doing more with mobile to make it easier to go through that process. So just to be clear, this isn't actually for this hotel site, this is just for this is for the Google store, I believe, which is our own data. So the next step is to do some diagnosis. So we've already seen that there are a large number of mobile devices out there. There's a large market within Spain. There's a lot of people who are reaching our site on mobile devices. And we're also seeing that within those, not that many of them are converting. So we'd like more of them to convert. So next, we want to do some diagnosis. We want to find out maybe why that is happening. So although we're obviously at a Google Analytics user conference, I want to talk about some of the other tools that are out there. So there are a number of tools that are available that allow you to go and get a little bit more detail around a user's journey. So Google Analytics has some great tools for looking at visitor flow and event flow, and I'll show you that in a moment. But some of these go into a little more around looking at actual mouse tracking, for example. 4Q will ask customers just 4 questions before they leave the site or while they're on the site, and that way you get a lot more feedback. And also it's worth doing full usability surveys, so actually getting real people in, getting them to look at your website, run through it and seeing how they behave. Because Google Analytics will give you some data, but it's never going to give you the kind of emotions and things that people are going through when they go through a website. So, for example, my mother-in-law, when she goes through a website and I watch her doing it, the way she will interact with it is completely different to me. And she'll generally swear a lot more while she's going through the site. And so if you're doing usability tests with real users, you'll start to get some of that emotion back that Google Analytics can't really give you. And maybe things like 4Q as well, with people filling out information. They will also give you more detail about how people are feeling about it and what people are frustrated about. So people sometimes think that if you get users in, you're getting them to test the site, it's extremely expensive, you're going to have to run it over a long period, you're going to have to get a lot of people in. But this is some research that was done by Jacob Nielsen. And if you look at this chart, when you get to around 6 users running through the site, so imagine having 6 people sitting in front of a computer, running through your site, maybe going on a laptop, going on a mobile device, going on an iPad, you'll be able to get enough feedback to identify 85% of the key problems. So you'll straight away be able to narrow down a lot of the usability problems just by getting 6 people in. So this doesn't have to be something that takes a huge amount of time, and it doesn't have to be something that involves hundreds of users. So, as I mentioned, I'm here to talk about Google Analytics as well. With Google Analytics, we're giving you more and more tools to allow you to diagnose issues with your site. But one of the key things is that you need to be able to start with some great data. Out of the box, just with a basic setup of Google Analytics, you will get some really good data. So you'll get information around bounce rate, get information around time on site. Hopefully you will set up some conversion goals on your site, and I would definitely recommend that as something to do. That's again something a certified partner can help you with. But also you can add in some extra things which will give you just a little bit more insight into user journeys. So we've got a page here, this is of, again, the Google Store. And you can see different items here being tagged up with events. So we have got, on the top right, we've got outbound links. So we can add event tracking to those to see where people are going from our site, where they're going on to. E-commerce links, so we could see maybe even if somebody's hovering over the add to cart button, but they don't actually add something. Dynamic page content, so if people are scrolling through items on the page, where it's not necessarily changing the page in the address bar, you could track those with events. This just gives you an extra layer of data that tells you more about customer interactions with your website. And the more data that's actionable, that is coming into Google Analytics, let me just pick the next one. Recently in Google Analytics, we have added something called the flow diagrams. So there are several different ones. There is visitor flow, there is goal flow, and there is also event flow. And there may be one other that I've forgotten, but those are some of the key ones. If we look at the visitor flow diagram here, this is showing for all visits. So at the moment I'm showing it for mobile users as well as desktop users. And you can see where people are coming from. So in this case, we've chosen to look at what country and territory people are coming from. I apologise that because the screen's rather small, it's difficult to see all of it. But we can see what pages they're landing on. So these are the landing pages. So we have, for example, the home page. We can then see where people are progressing from there. So what is the percentage of drop-off? So here we can see that 56.5% of the traffic is dropping off after it reaches the home page. We can then see the flow through to the next stage of the process. So where are people going from the home page to the next stage? And if you want to highlight any particular area, you can go through and click on that. So if we just wanted to look at United Kingdom, and that will just highlight the flow just through that particular item. Likewise, if you wanted to choose just a page, like a YouTube page, you can highlight traffic just through there. And this allows you to get an idea of a typical user journey. All of this is obviously aggregate data, so it is from all visitors. But what becomes interesting is if you start to apply mobile segment to this. So if we go down here, one of the default segments in Google Analytics is the mobile segment. So if we just go to mobile traffic, we'll now be able to see what the difference is between a journey from a mobile user versus a desktop user. So here you can see people arriving. Again, there's a drop-off, but you can see the numbers are lower in terms of the actual overall numbers because we're talking about mobile. And where this becomes interesting is where you start to look at people progressing through things like purchasing. You're able to compare the journey flow for somebody who's coming from a desktop computer, whether they're going through and purchasing items or converting, in other words, maybe downloading a PDF, versus mobile traffic and how that is converting. And if you implement events on your site, then you can now also use event flow. So in the example that Justin had, this would be people who are actually visiting the site and then going through and looking at his blog articles. But another example that would be quite easy to set up and very powerful is if there is a form on your site that people have to fill out. You can set up events for each field in that form. and you can then see how far people are progressing through the form before they're dropping out. That gives you a very clear indication if maybe you've got too many fields in there and people are dropping out because they don't want to put the date of birth, their pet's name, all those kind of things. When you apply a mobile filter to that, a mobile segment, then it becomes even more obvious of the differences on a mobile device, and perhaps filling out the form on a mobile device. And hopefully the sound, I'm going to try and use this microphone. And then I'm going to do a live demo. Okay. Hopefully I won't blow everyone's ears off.
Google Analytics now includes content experiments, which lets you easily and quickly offer visitors different variations of your content, and then see which variations lead to more conversions. Let's say you run a website that sells bicycles. You're already using goals to track sales, but you'd like to see if you can improve some of your product pages to increase sales. Introducing new pages one at a time to your site and then waiting to collect results is time-consuming. Content Experiments lets you experiment more quickly. Your goal is to find a version of your product page that increases helmet sales. Content Experiments lets you test up to 6 variations of a page. After you design and publish your variation pages, log in to Analytics, and under the Content section, click Experiments. Click Start Experimenting to open the wizard, and let it guide you through the setup, including how to add the experiment code to your original page. First, you'll add the URL for the original helmet page, along with the 2 new variations that you've created and uploaded. Click Next to select what goal you'd like to improve and what percentage of visitors to include in the experiment. You'll then have the option to add the experiment code to the original page yourself, or you can email it to your webmaster. Once the code is added, you can validate it within the setup wizard. Finally, you can review the full experiment that you've set up and select to run it now. Once you've finished the setup, Content Experiments does the rest. When visitors arrive at your site, Content Experiments serves either the original page or a variation to the percentage of your audience you've specified. Visitors continue to see the original or the same variation on subsequent visits. Content Experiments tracks how each group of visitors converts, given which version of the page it sees. You can examine the results while the experiment is in progress. The report for each experiment lets you see the number of conversions and the conversion rate for your original page and each variation, and you can see the likelihood of each variation to outperform the original. The experiment ends once a winning variation is found, or once it's determined that none of the variations outperform the original. Content Experiments integrated into Google Analytics lets you improve your site experience and optimize conversion rates on the things that matter for your business. This is just the beginning. We'll be continually improving and adding useful features to help you create an even better site.
Use tools like 4Q to get feedback on how people are reacting to the changes to the site. People generally don't like change, and there's going to be a stage where people are going to dislike it just because there is a change. But you can go through then, and once you've implemented, it's time to start all over again. You need to come up with another hypothesis to identify. You need to collect the data, make sure you understand what your business priorities are, develop that priority list and work on it, then run through this process again. So identify, diagnose, test and implement, and hopefully at that stage you'll then be able to start to enjoy the success. So you'll start to reap the benefits, you'll see that you are getting more conversions on your site, and you'll start to see some of the work that you put in pay off. And it doesn't have to be a huge amount of work. As we showed like with the Obama campaign, there can be a huge win just by changing, for example, a landing page or a home page and just running some basic tests on it. So that concludes this part of the presentation, but I did promise that I would also cover in a little bit of detail the Google Analytics Premium offering. So first of all, has anyone heard of Google Analytics Premium in the audience? 2 people? Fantastic, okay. Obviously, we need to work on our marketing and our landing pages. So Google Analytics Premium. First of all, the most important thing to say with Premium is we have no plans of ending the free Google Analytics version. It's extremely important to us. It's very strategic to us. It leads to people creating better websites, and that's good for everybody. It's good overall for the web. And it's obviously the tie-in with Google AdWords and that side of things. People who have good websites, they tend to lead to doing more advertising online, and so it works for everybody. So there are no plans to end the free version of Google Analytics. However, for some of our larger advertisers, we did get some feedback around Google Analytics, the standard version, around some of the things that they would like to see that maybe wouldn't apply to everyone. So we have millions and millions of people on Google Analytics, people just running a blog site like I have, which nobody visits, right through to customers who have millions of visitors every day. So obviously we didn't want to, we wanted to work out what would be appropriate for those larger advertisers. So some of the things we got feedback on was the complexity of the site. They have large amounts of visitors, and there's huge volumes of data coming through to our servers, and how do we deal with that? How do we provide something, an offering that can cope with that? Also reassurances, so around SLAs. So they need to know that the data is accurate, they need to know that the UI is always available and up to date. If you're running a blog site, you might not mind if you go online and you can't see for 5 minutes or something that the data's not there, or you might not mind a delay in the data arriving, but if you're a large business, it's obviously critical that you know that data is accurate and up to date. And also sampled data, which is something some of you with larger sites, larger numbers of visitors might see a lot, particularly if you're looking at large date ranges. You'll often see this is based on X visits out of however many, and that is sampled data. So sampled data is extremely useful for giving you trends. And we put it in there because it gives you the reports very quickly. It's where we see that a report would take a long time to generate otherwise. And so the reason we're showing you a sample version of it is so you can get the data within a reasonable time within the interface. However, if you run a report and you're a large business and you're relying upon it to make decisions, you want to know that if you run that same report twice, that you're getting exactly the same data. And you also want to know right down to the nth degree how many visitors there were. Maybe once you've done a segment that is going down to a very small percentage of users, you still want accurate data. So here are the key things that are involved in Google Analytics Premium. So there's processing power. So users of Google Analytics Premium have a dedicated pipeline for their data. So everything in terms of the back-end system, so the website, the code that's on there is exactly the same as it would be for a standard implementation. So if you were to purchase Google Analytics Premium tomorrow, it wouldn't be anything you needed to change on your site. It's effectively a switch that is flicked at our side that changes it to Google Analytics Premium. It provides you with advanced analysis tools, so you get unsampled data, as you mentioned. It allows you to apply extra custom variables, and I'll go through all the details of that. You get dedicated support, so Premium can be purchased either through Google Analytics Premium resellers, so we have reseller partners who will sell Google Analytics Premium, or you can purchase it directly from Google, but at the moment that's only in the US and the UK, so support and everything like that would be based in English and it would be based in the UK or in the US. And SLAs, which is very important, so in other words, you can rely upon the data being there when you need it, make sure that the data is being collected, being displayed, and also showing data within a specific period, so showing data that is not older than 4 hours. So I won't go through all of these, but we're basing it on Google Analytics, which is used by millions of websites worldwide. So it's a very familiar, easy to use interface. There's a large amount of users already. There's been huge amounts of feedback. I mean, if we change anything in Google Analytics, we guarantee that somebody will give us some feedback on it. It's often, like when the new interface was released, I think there was feedback. It was trending on Twitter, which is fantastic to be involved in a product that's got so much interest and so many people involved with it and giving feedback. Zero migration costs. So in terms of if you implemented Premium tomorrow, as I mentioned, you wouldn't need to change anything in your website. Your webmaster wouldn't even need to go in and change the code. You can access all your existing customer reports and segments, so you don't need to change anything within your Google Analytics setup. So what are the changes in terms of what's available? So the premium version of Google Analytics allows you to have 200 profiles. So there may be many sites that don't need that many different profiles, but some of our customers are global customers. They want to have different profiles within Google Analytics for different regions, or they want to break data into different buckets. So they may have several sites and they want each site going into an individual profile, or there may be that they want to have a roll-up profile that covers all of their global sites, and then individual regional profiles as well for their individual sites. So visitor tagging. So it's actually not just visitor tagging, but custom variables are an extremely powerful way to allow you to segment your data. So out of the box, Google Analytics will send through from your site. If somebody visits, it will send through the page view. So it will tell you what page somebody visited. And as I mentioned before, if you add event tagging, it will also send through some events, so some interactions. But what might be interesting is to look at different segments of users. So that might be